A world issue that is important and relevant to the novel, titled The Road by Cormac McCarthy, is climate change. For those who have not read the novel, The Road is about an unnamed father and son's attempt at survival in a post apocalyptic world. The setting in which the two characters must travel through is described by the narrator as gray, dull, and in ashes. Climate change, as defined by National Geographic, is the long term shift in global or regional climate patterns and often includes the drastic rise of global temperatures. The first time the idea of climate change is discovered in the novel is the reason for the father and son's journey to the coast. They are going to the coast where it is warmer, as the man does not believe they will last another winter where they are. This would make sense if the narrator does not describe the world as burnt and dead once they get to the road. This indicates that the climate has drastically changed from when the apocalyptic event had occurred. Not only does climate change cause drastic changes in the weather, like droughts, heat waves, and large storms, but it warms oceans, can harm animals and their habitats, and absolutely destroys livelihoods of communities. This is displayed in The Road. The world the father and son survive has no animals or large communities. The man even contemplates whether he believes cows have gone extinct when him and his son reach the barn in the novel. The theme of the color gray is presented in the novel. The author chooses to describe almost every setting as gray, from furniture, clothes, windows, to the ocean and sky. Similar to how a major reason for climate change are greenhouse gases which fill the air with gray smoke, the setting of the novel comes from something that produces a gray cloak over the world. Greenhouse gases have many horrible health effects. They cause climate change by trapping heat and contribute to respiratory disease from smog and air pollution. Connecting climate change to my novel once again, the main characters must wear face masks throughout their journey. I believe the true reasoning behind the post apocalyptic setting of the novel has to be the neglection of climate change from industrialization, eventually causing environmental degradation of the planet, which explains why the father and son cannot grow food, hunt animals, or breathe regularly. When climate change is looked through a cultural lens, cultural impacts are highlighted, environmental racism becomes a cause for concern, and cultural perspectives of the issue can be analyzed. Cultural criticism is a critical lens in which literature or any other form of media can be viewed. This form of criticism examines how different ethnicities, class identification, political beliefs, and religious views affect the ways in which media is created or interpreted. Because climate change affects the whole world, it affects countless communities in some way. The cultural impacts the issue has on indigenous people is possibly the worst. By affecting the environment and natural resources of tribal communities, climate change makes it harder for tribes to access safe, nutritious, and traditional foods that have cultural importance to their cultural practices. It also increases the health risks of drinking water in those communities. The issue may also threaten cultural identities for tribes of people who perceive nature as an integral part of cultural practices or sacred ceremonies. For those who do not know, environmental racism is a form of systematic racism. It is a result of institutional policies and practices towards minority groups in neighborhoods populated primarily by people of color and members of socioeconomic backgrounds that are burdened with disproportionate numbers of hazards, including toxic waste facilities, garbage dumps, and other sources of environmental pollutants. Environmental racism is connected to climate change because the issue is one of the many causes of climate change. Through the cultural lens, when looking at climate change and who it affects, more people that are victims of environmental racism are faced with climate change as well. Cultural perspectives are important when discussing climate change because information about climate change does not connect with all cultures and worldviews the same way or at all. Because these cultures may know little to nothing about climate change and how the climate is changing, they are not prepared for the future. It is obvious in my novel that humanity was not prepared for what was to come. This resulted in the worst case scenario. It is important to know the historical context a global issue like climate change has to better understand it. Early inklings that humans could alter global climate dates back to ancient Greeks who believed that chopping down trees and plowing fields could affect rainfall. In the 1820s, Joseph Fourier introduced the greenhouse effect. He proposed that the Earth's atmosphere acts much like greenhouse does, and that energy that enters the Earth's atmosphere becomes trapped inside. Fourier's theory was deemed an oversimplification as energy does not simply enter the Earth's atmosphere, but is absorbed by the Earth itself. By 1895, Svante Arrhenius discovered that greenhouse gases, specifically CO2, could warm the Earth. Jumping to the 1900s, people welcomed warmer Earth but were not aware of the impacts. That was until global cooling was believed to become an issue. Another ice age was believed to happen in the 1970s, but never came to fruition. In 1988, a sharp increase of global temperatures rose and global warming, a subproduct of climate change, occurred. In 1989, the International Panel on Climate Change was established under the United Nations to provide a specific view of climate change. Jumping to 2015, former President Barack Obama would sign the Paris Climate Agreement, which 197 countries pledged to set targets for cuts to their greenhouse gases. And recently in 2018, Greta Thunberg began a protest called the School Strike for Climate, which raised awareness for global warming. Climate change is happening right now. An example of this is the heat wave that BC is facing, which is causing hundreds of sudden deaths, forest fires, and eradication of some sea life. CBC has reported on this issue and states that the heat wave has brought the realities of climate change into even sharper relief. Thanks for watching my presentation, and I recommend that you as a viewer are now aware of the factor climate change plays in our lives.